It was still dark outside when Adana got up. The sky was that deep blue that comes just before sunrise, and there was just enough light to see the ground in front of her. She tied her old wrapper tightly around her chest, grabbed the short broom, and started sweeping the cold cement floor of the compound. Her feet were bare, and the Harmattan breeze brushed her skin, but she didn't stop. This was her routine. Before the birds even started chirping, before anyone else opened their eyes, Adana was already working. She swept every corner. Then she fetched water from the tap at the back. Then she did the dishes from the night before, even though she hadn't eaten herself. Sometimes she'd go the whole morning without a single bite. The house she lived in was big, but old. Cracked walls, faded green and cream paint, and a yard that always needed cleaning. 4 rooms, a parlor, 1 tiny kitchen, and a narrow hallway with plastic chairs and buckets scattered everywhere. That was home, at least it was supposed to be. She lived there with her husband, Ibuka, his mother, and his 2 sisters. From the first day Adana moved in, she knew she didn't belong. Ibuka's mother looked at her like she had brought bad luck. His sisters laughed and whispered every time she passed. And Ibuka? The man who once called her his queen didn't even see her anymore. He had changed. One morning, Mama Ibuka stood in the kitchen and said, "You must think we're all fools, sitting here while you act like a princess." Adana was kneeling by the fire, her hands covered in gari flour. She looked up slowly. "Mama, I've been cooking since 5 a.m. The soup is almost done," she said softly. "Don't talk back," Mama snapped. "Just because my son married you doesn't mean you're anybody." Adana didn't say another word. She just stirred the soup quietly. Later that day, she washed 3 buckets of clothes, 1 for Ibuka, 1 for his mother, and 1 for his sisters. Her back was on fire, but nobody helped. The girls were in the hallway, laughing at something on their phones. Adana kept scrubbing, watching them from the corner of her eye. They never offered help. They never even asked if she was okay. Ibuka came home late, didn't say a word, dropped his phone, changed his clothes, left again. She stood at the doorway watching him walk off into the street like she was a stranger. She didn't cry. She had cried so much already that her tears had gone silent. And as she turned back inside, something inside her whispered, "How did I end up like this?" But no answer came. That night she sat on a small mat in the corner of the room, next to the single flickering bulb. The air smelled like palm oil and soap. Her daughters, Ifeoma and Chika, were sleeping on the mattress. Tiny fingers clutched the edge of Adana's wrapper. For a moment, just looking at them, the pain in her chest felt lighter. They were the only reason she was still standing. She was the only light in a dark place. But even they weren't spared. Ibuka's mother would say it right before them, clapping her hands and shaking her head. "Girls only? Just girls?" As if her granddaughters were shameful. One afternoon, Adana went to pick up Ifeoma from school, and the teacher pulled her aside. "Is everything okay at home?" she asked gently. Ifeoma told a classmate her grandma called her a mistake. Adana's throat went dry. She forced a smile. "She must have misunderstood," she said, but she knew her daughter had heard the truth. Back home, Adana did it all. Scrubbing, cooking, cleaning toilets, serving food. Most days, she didn't eat until the girls had slept. When they asked, "Why doesn't Auntie Amaka help?" Adana would say, "She's busy," even though they saw Amaka lounging on the chair all day, phone in hand. Ibuka never asked how she was doing, never said thank you, never even looked at her like a human being. When he did come home, he'd bring his friends, sometimes women. He'd sit in the parlor laughing with them, while Adana stayed in the kitchen, wiping her eyes with one hand and stirring the pot with the other. One night, she found the strength to speak. "I just want a little respect, peace in this house," she said. Ibuka looked her dead in the eye and said, "You're lucky I married you. I don't owe you anything." Then he turned his back and slept like the world was fine. She stared at the ceiling all night, listening to the wall clock tick. Every second, time moved forward. But her pain, it stayed. People in the neighborhood would whisper about her. "That woman has suffered." Someone would say at the roadside stall, "If she had brothers, would she be living like this?" They didn't know. Nobody knew. The land papers in her name were locked in a file cabinet, that the company registered in Abuja was hers, that the cars parked in a garage in another city were hers too. But she wore plain wrappers and simple shoes. She kept her mouth shut. She wanted to be loved, not for her money, but for her heart. Now, she wasn't sure she had made the right choice. That evening, the wind smelled like rain. The sky was dark, the yard too quiet. She was pinning her daughter's washed clothes on the line when she saw the gatekeeper, Musa, standing nearby. He quickly looked away, but she had already seen it, the concern in his eyes. Musa had worked there for years. A quiet man, did his job, kept to himself. But recently, she noticed the way he looked at her, not like the others, not with pity, not with desire, with something else. Something like quiet respect. She gave him a small nod. He nodded back. And that's how it started, this strange kind of friendship, built with no words. Later that week, she returned from the market, arms full of nylon bags, when rain started pouring. Her wrapper was soaked. Her hands were slipping. She could barely hold the bags. She staggered through the gate, and from the window, Amaka laughed. "Mama's girls have turned to donkeys," she said. Adana said nothing. Then she saw Musa running toward her. He grabbed the bags, walked beside her. "Let me help," he said softly. She only whispered, "Thank you." That evening, after she had dropped the goods, he waited near the kitchen. "You're too strong," he said. "No woman should carry pain like this alone." Her throat clenched. She turned her face quickly. From there on, he helped when he could. Carried water, lifted heavy bags, watched her daughters when they played in the yard, gave them sweets when no one was looking. He never said too much, never crossed any lines. But his presence, it brought her peace. One evening, she sat under the mango tree, tired, too tired to think. Musa walked up and said, "You don't deserve this life." She looked at him and said, "But it's the life I chose." He shook his head. "You chose love. Love didn't choose you." Her chest hurt. He walked away. But something inside her changed. That's where we'll pause this part of the story. In the next part, things get louder, the walls shake, choices get made. And Adana? She'll start seeing just how far people can go when they think you're nothing. Rain hammered the rooftop like drumming fists. Inside the kitchen, Adana stood barefoot, one hand on the pot, the other wiping her eyes. The air was thick with the smell of pepper soup and silence. Ifoma and Chika sat huddled in a corner on a small stool. Their wide eyes said everything. It was one of those nights again that made the walls feel like they were closing in. Ibuka wasn't home, and when he didn't come home on time, it usually meant one thing. He was with another woman. Adana didn't bother calling him. She had stopped doing that a long time ago. Questions only brought insults, sometimes slaps, and when the words hit, they stung worse than the hands. But deep in her chest, something still hoped for a sign. A word, a look, anything to remind her that he still remembered the woman he once loved. Then came a knock at the gate. A hard one. The girls jumped. Adana wiped her hands and rushed to open the door. It was Ibuka, drunk, laughing, and next to him, a woman, tall, loud. The rain smeared her makeup, but she held on to him like he was a prize. They walked right past Adana, laughing like she wasn't even there. The girls stood in the doorway, their eyes confused. Adana followed them into the parlor. "Ibuka," she said softly, "not in front of the children. Please." He turned to her, his face twisted. "Who will tell me what to do in my house?" Mama came out of her room adjusting her wrapper. "What is going on here?" Adana pointed at the woman. "This is wrong, Mama. I've endured enough." Mama rolled her eyes. "You've endured? We're the ones enduring you." Amaka and Anita joined in. "So now you think you have power just because Musa is fetching water for you?" Amaka spat. Adana felt the ground shift under her feet. "What are you saying?" she asked. Juliet stepped forward. "You and that gate man think we don't see you whispering like lovers? Disgracing this family?" Adana's lips trembled. "That's not true." Ebuka slammed his bag to the floor. I'm tired of this woman. She's useless. No son, no name, no respect. Her knees weakened. Her daughters ran to her crying. Mama! They screamed, clutching her legs. Then came the words that changed everything. Get out of my house, Ebuka roared. Adana blinked. Mama, say something. Mama folded her arms. He's the head of the house. If he says go, then go. The wind outside howled like a warning. Adana picked up her daughters and their cries were sharp at night. No slippers, no wrapper to cover herself, no bag, just pain. She stumbled to the gate and knocked. Musa. It was a whisper, but he heard. He opened the gate, his eyes wide. Rain poured down her face, mixing with tears. Madam Adana, what happened? She didn't answer. He looked at the girls, all shivering. Come in. He led them into a small room behind the compound. It was tiny, just one bed, one stool, and a dim lamp. But to Adana and her daughters, it felt like safety. Musa handed them dry clothes, made hot tea, lit the lamp, and that night, Adana cried more than she had in years. But this time, not just from pain. This time from something she hadn't felt in a long while. Kindness. He didn't ask questions, didn't stare, just folded a blanket and placed it gently at the edge of the bed. Ifoma and Chika lay beside her, their tiny hands still holding on. The rain outside hissed against the roof. Thunder rolled in the distance. Adana didn't sleep. She sat upright, watching her girls. The tears had dried, but the pain was still heavy. Everything she had tried to build with love was now scattered like sand. All those years she smiled through the insults. For what? She thought back to the first time she met Ebuka. He had called her special, told her he saw something in her. She believed him. But now she knew he didn't see her. He saw someone he could break. She wrapped the blanket tighter around the girls. No air conditioner, no tiles, no fridge humming in the corner, but there was peace. And that was enough. A little later, Musa returned with a tray. On it was warm yam porridge and 2 spoons. You should eat, he said softly. Adana shook her head. I can't. For them, he said, nodding toward the girls. She looked at them, sleeping so deeply, then back at Musa. Thank you, she whispered. He gave a single nod and went to sit outside, under the small canopy near the gate. He stayed there all night, watching, guarding. The next morning, Adana woke to the sound of a rooster. Her body ached like it had been dragged across stone, but inside, there was calm. She stepped outside quietly. Musa was still sitting at the gate, eyes red from lack of sleep. Good morning, she said. He smiled a little. Good morning, madam. You didn't have to stay out here. I couldn't sleep knowing you were out here like that. She looked away. Her throat was tight. That morning, she washed the girls' clothes. Then she swept the compound beside Musa. People walked past and stared. Some whispered. Adana didn't care. Her home had rejected her. Her husband had humiliated her. But this man, this gatekeeper, offered her water, food, safety, and it meant more than anything she'd ever gotten from Ebuka. It wasn't love, but it was real. And sometimes, real is enough. In the next part, Adana faces them again, but this time she's not there to beg. She's not there to cry, and she's not the same woman they threw out. It was a hot afternoon, the kind that made everything feel slower. The compound buzzed with voices. Ebuka's family sat under the mango tree, cracking roasted corn and gossiping like they didn't have a care in the world. Sandra, Ebuka's new woman, was there too, wearing a bright red dress and gold slippers, her makeup thick and loud. She laughed like she wanted the entire neighborhood to hear her. Adana hadn't returned since that rainy night, but today she came back. Not to stay, just to collect a few things. Clothes for her daughters, school books, a pair of shoes. They had been wearing the same outfits since the night they were kicked out. She stepped through the gate quietly, eyes calm, wrapper tied neatly around her waist. No drama, no noise, just quiet. But quiet never lasts in a house like that. Juliet was the first to notice her. Look who crawled back, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. The runaway maid. Mama looked up, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing here?" Adana kept her voice low. "I just came to pick up some of the girls' clothes, that's all." Ibuka came out holding Sandra's hand. "You shouldn't be here," he said, frowning. "I didn't come to fight," Adana replied. "I only need a few things for my children." Anita stood up sharply. "You've got guts, showing your face after what you've been doing with the gate man." Adana froze. "What did you say?" "Don't act like you don't know," Juliet snapped. "The whole street is talking. You live with Musa now, sleeping in his room like husband and wife?" Adana's heart pounded. "That's not true," she said quietly. "Musa helped me when no one else would." Sandra rolled her eyes. "What kind of woman moves into the gate man's room with her children? That's beyond cheap." Adana stood firm. "Say what you like, but don't lie about a good man." Mama stood slowly, her face cold. "Adana, don't ever come back here. Ibuka has moved on. He has a real woman now." Ibuka nodded beside her. "And Sandra is pregnant. We don't have space for you anymore." Those words hit harder than any slap. For a moment, Adana couldn't even breathe. She turned and saw her daughters watching from the gate, their eyes wide, confused. She turned back to face them, these people who used to be her family. "I don't want your house," she said softly, "and I don't need your name." Then she walked away. She didn't cry. Not this time. At the corner of the street, Musa waited. He had seen everything, heard everything, but he didn't say a word, just opened the gate. The girls ran to their mother. She held them tight. That night, Adana sat outside the small room they now called home. The sky turned orange. The crickets started singing. Musa sat nearby, quiet as always. The pain was still fresh, but her silence wasn't fear anymore. It was a strength, because inside her, something new was waking up. A voice, clear and still. "They will regret this." And she believed it. In the next part, that voice gets louder, not with anger, not with shouting, with action, with quiet moves that shake the ground. Days passed, then weeks. No one heard from Adana. No visits, no messages, no drama. It was as if she had disappeared. But the street didn't forget. Word started to spread. Quiet whispers at market stalls, among tailors and hair braiders, even at the corner where the KK drivers gathered. "You know that woman they threw out? I heard she owns land somewhere in Abuja. I heard she's the real name behind that new estate near Royal Avenue." The same people who once called her the maid now spoke her name in hushed tones, like they had missed something big. But inside Ibuka's compound, everything seemed the same. Loud laughter, roasted corn under the mango tree. Sandra was still there, 6 months pregnant now. Mama and the sisters tried to keep up appearances, but things had started to slip. Sandra refused to cook. She complained about the heat, the noise, the smell of Gary. She barely lifted a finger. Juliet and Anita no longer laughed around her, they avoided her. Ibuka, he had lost his job. A fallout with his boss ended badly. And just like that, the money stopped flowing. The girls returned to selling small items by the roadside. Even Mama began calling distant cousins to check on them, hoping someone might send money. But no one mentioned Adana. To them, she was gone, a closed chapter. Until the black SUV rolled in. It moved slowly, clean, shiny, its engine humming like a whisper. It didn't stop at the gate. It drove straight into the compound. When the driver stepped out, dressed in all black, tall, composed, he walked to the back and opened the door. And there she was, Adana. But not the woman they remembered. She stepped out, wearing a gold dress that caught the sunlight like fire. Her hair was wrapped high. Her makeup was soft but sharp. On her wrist, a silver watch shimmered. Her steps were quiet, but they felt loud. Her heels clicked on the cement like a countdown. The compound went silent. Ibuka stood up. Juliet froze, an orange half peeled in her hand. Sandra quickly sat up, adjusting her dress. Adana didn't rush. She looked around once, then smiled softly. "Hello, Ibuka." Mama stood from her stool, mouth slightly open. "Adana, is it really you?" She nodded. Yes, Mama, it's me, Sandra whispered to Ibuka. I thought you said she was poor. Adana turned to her, voice steady. Poor? That's what he told you? Ibuka looked around, confused. What's going on here? Another car pulled in, then another. Security men stepped out, wearing suits. They opened the doors for two women and a young man who joined Adana, standing behind her like shadows. She faced them all. I didn't come here for a fight. I came to say thank you. Juliet blinked. For what? For showing me who you really are. Ibuka stepped forward. Adana, I don't understand. You never did, she said. Behind her, the backseat door opened again. Ifeoma and Chika stepped out, dressed in white gowns, their hair braided neatly, their faces were calm, glowing. Adana turned and looked toward the gate. Musa stood there, dressed in a clean uniform, watching from a distance. She smiled at him, then turned back. I have forgiven you all, she said, but I will never forget. And with that, she turned and walked back to her car. Not a single person moved. Not Mama, not Juliet, not even Ibuka. They all just stood there as the car pulled out of the gate and disappeared down the road. Only then did Ibuka sit down, head in his hands, sweat on his face. Not from heat, but from shame. Juliet said nothing. Anita wiped away silent tears. Sandra had already gone inside. That night, the street buzzed like never before. Adana came in a convoy. She's the one behind Harrington Homes. No wonder she never complained. No wonder she kept quiet. In her new house, far away from all that noise, Adana stood on her balcony watching the stars. The air was still. Ifeoma and Chika were inside watching cartoons in the family room. Musa, now her estate manager, sat in the office helping her with plans. He had stayed loyal when she had nothing. Treated her like someone, not something. And now? Now she had peace. She didn't wear gold for pride. She wore it to show she had survived. She didn't drive back to show off. She went to close a chapter. In the next part, some people come knocking, not with insults, but with apologies. But by then, Adana's world has already changed. 2 days passed after that visit. The compound Ibuka once ruled felt different now. Quiet, in a strange, uneasy way. Even the mango tree seemed to cast less shade. Mama sat on the same bench, staring at the spot where Adana's car had parked. She hadn't spoken since that day. Juliet no longer peeled oranges. Anita stayed inside. Sandra, now heavily pregnant, had become more demanding, louder, more impatient. But no one dared complain. No one had the right to speak anymore. Ibuka? He barely ate. He paced the house like he was searching for something, though he didn't know what. His hands trembled sometimes. He'd sit still for hours, then suddenly rise and look out the window, as if expecting that black SUV to return. But it never did. Then one morning, just after sunrise, Mama wrapped her old wrapper and called everyone together. We're going, she said. We're going to ask for forgiveness. So they went, Mama, Ibuka, and Juliet. No driver, no car, just tired legs and heavy hearts. They walked all the way to Adana's estate. It took nearly an hour. No one said much along the way. There was nothing to say. When they arrived, the gate looked even bigger than they remembered. New paint, clean lines, security cameras. Guards at attention. They stood silently. Mama knocked. A security guard came out. He didn't recognize them at first, but when he did, his expression hardened. Can we see Madame Adana? Mama asked. She's not receiving visitors today, the guard replied calmly. Ibuka stepped forward, eyes red. Please, just tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I still love her. The guard stared at him. Now you remember love? Ibuka said nothing. They waited another 5 minutes, but the gate didn't open, so they turned and walked away. Slow, quiet, heavy. And as the gate closed behind them, the world saw something no one expected. A woman they once threw out, now standing tall. Not because she shouted, not because she fought back with fists, but because she kept her dignity, because she walked away instead of begging, because she knew her worth, even when others tried to bury it. Inside the estate, Adana sat on her balcony, watching the sky. Ifeoma and Chika played in the garden below. Their laughter rose with the wind. Musa stepped out with a file in his hand. He paused beside her. They came. She nodded. I know. Should I have let them in? Her gaze didn't waver. No. They stood together in silence. No need for more words. That moment said everything. Adana had begun with love. She had given everything. Her time, her strength, her silence, her grace. And when it all broke, she didn't lose herself. She found something stronger. Not just success, not just wealth. She found peace. Real peace. And sometimes that's the biggest win of all. Now her story moves forward. Not with Abuka, not with Mama, not with apologies that came too late, but with her daughters. And maybe with time, with the man who stood beside her in silence when everyone else turned away. And that's how Adana's story ends. For now. A woman thrown out with nothing but her children and her pain, who later stood behind her own gates, calm, powerful, and free. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't fight back with insults. She just rose, quietly, like the kind of storm you never see coming until everything has already changed. Musa never asked to be a hero. He simply did the right thing, over and over. And in the end, that made him more powerful than any title or wealth. Now let me ask you two things. One, do you think Adana should have let them in when they came back to apologize? Two, if you were in Musa's place, would you have done what he did, helped her quietly even when no one else cared? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, true, raw, real, watch the next video.